Kislev. Their campaign mechanics have just been revealed in CA's blog. We're going to go through it and see what they're all about. And Kislev is the faction I personally am looking most forward to, so finding this stuff out was pretty exciting, because by Urson I am ready for some new campaigns. So, let's have a look. Let your foes feel the fury of winter with Kislev's campaign mechanics. So, this is all the campaign mechanics, or at least the basic campaign mechanics. Maybe individual lords will have their separate mechanics and future lords will have their own more unique stuff as well. But for the basic mechanics of Kislev, here we go. First of all, we have devotion. If it hasn't been clear, Kislevites are a fairly religious sort. So, given Kislev's position in the world in the north, where they're constantly defending against the chaos invasions from the north, they have to be a pretty tough and hardy people, and it helps, as it says, to have something to believe in. So they have their religion and their devotion. So I imagine that the higher the devotion is, the more passionate they will be about the cause, and thus you'll gain some bonuses. And if they don't have devotion, they'll start to maybe stop believing so much and stop trusting it. They'll question their gods and their beliefs may be shaken, and that could lead to disaster, or at least some negative campaign traits perhaps. And it's going to come in the form of a currency. As it says, we can gain it through fighting armies of chaos. We can get it from buildings and various other sources. So we're going to have this currency of devotion, which we're going to be able to spend. But it sounds like you need to kind of keep a reserve of it, because it does say, should it dip too low, chaos armies may attack your homeland, finding it all the easier to manifest and invade a people who no longer believe they can be stopped. So you got to keep your devotion up somewhat, but you are going to be able to spend it on stuff. It says it can be used on buildings and technology, so that's going to be one place that we're going to be able to spend our devotion. So that's our first mechanic, building up a currency, spending it on stuff. Although it does say you can lose it if you declare war on other Kislev factions and commit heretical actions. You will actually lose devotion, so you got to be a bit careful with it as well. So pretty typical total war mechanic, that's fine. One of the biggest places you're going to spend your devotion is on the motherland. The primary use of devotion is to perform one of the 4 rituals of the motherland. So these are kind of praying to different Kislevite gods, and they will affect your faction in different ways. Salyak, god of healing and comfort, a teacher of common sense but cannot bring back the dead. Increases growth and replenishment. Daz, god of fire and sun, increases income and trade and all buildings. Then we've got Ursun, god of bears, causes attrition to all enemy armies in your lands and provides a unique army ability that puts a powerful hex on a target area, so that's a battle ability, I guess. And then Tur, god of thunder, gives all armies additional melee attack and bestows a unique army ability to massively increase damage potential in an area. So another battlefield ability. But we got all those 4 to choose from. If we got a bunch of devotion, we can spend it on one of those. Which one we might need will of course depend on our battle situation or our campaign situation. If we're in a constant state of war and we need that replenishment, then Salyak would be a good call. If you're just kind of chilling out and building your economy, then Daz might be the way to go, increases the income and stuff. So those are nice enough just to boost us up when we need some help in a certain area of our campaign. The gods will be there to help us out. And what's more, it says, each ritual to the motherland also causes a great winter to whip across Kislev lands, spread snow across any battles in their lands, and dissuading attacks from enemies. Should your devotion be enough, you can switch between or continue the effects at will. So we're going to be able to control the weather somewhat, and that's going to be able to help us defend our Kislev lands potentially. So that's pretty nice, because of all this chaos stuff constantly attacking you, something to kind of deter them from attacking you sounds like it will be very useful. Now, this is where things get a little more interesting, supporters and the spiritual conflict for Kislev. So it's kind of like you're in competition, whether you're playing as Tzarina or Kostaltyn, you're going to be in competition with the other, trying to prove that your faction is the best to lead Kislev. Here we can see those 4 different gods that you can pray to get the bonuses, and then below we've got a meter for supporters for both Tzarina in the Ice Court and Kostaltyn and the Great Orthodoxy. So while you're going to be competing with and killing off chaos, you're also going to be competing against the other main Kislev faction for supremacy of the nation of Kislev itself. Which sounds like a pretty interesting mechanic to me, playing 2 kind of allies but also enemies at the same time against each other, but they're kind of working for the same cause ultimately. So yeah, it's a little bit different. It'd be fun to see how that plays in a co-op campaign if you play both of those. But we're going to have another currency with this. We've got supporters. We've got to try and gather them through various sources. And that's kind of an internal currency that we need to manage and worry about as well. And ultimately, if you win this race, then you'll be able to confederate a lot of the smaller Kislev factions. And I guess the other faction as well of the bigger 2. But I wonder what happens if you're playing as Tzarina and Kostaltyn overtakes you and gets there first and fills up that bar. What happens to you as the player? Do you have to then be kind of confederated into the AI? Or will they just take control of all your stuff and you'll just have to watch for the rest of the campaign? Probably not, but imagine. This sounds like a really fresh mechanic though. I'm looking forward to this. It's kind of a political war amongst your nation rather than an actual war. As it says, they won't declare war on each other, Tzarina and Kostaltyn, because they know it'll cost them both too much and then they'll probably fall and then the world's dead. So, got to keep the peace. On to Atomons and the great cities of Kislev. Kislev has a strict hierarchy of order within its society, and the Atomons are what sit between the Tzarina and her people. They are the rulers of cities and regions, conducting the everyday business, blah blah blah. So, they're basically like the governors of regions for Kislev, it sounds like, and they'll be able to boost up your provinces based on what you need at the time. It says they can affect income, growth, control, and corruption. So let's say you've got low public order, it needs a bit of a boost. Well, you employ an Atomon to boost it up for you. Or you've got a lot of chaos corruption everywhere. Well, you employ the Atomon to reduce the corruption for you. So it sounds like just another mechanic to help us manage when times get tough with certain aspects of dealing with the onslaught of constant chaos. But you do only get one Atomon per 2 provinces, so you're not going to have loads of them. You do have to kind of put them in places where you are really going to need them, lest they be wasted. And they're actually recruited in the form of lords, but they're a little bit different, as it does say they do not earn XP like traditional lords, but will face various dilemmas to increase their skills. So it sounds like you might get some kind of control over how they're built and what kind of traits they might have. You can also use them in combat, but if they die, they are going to be gone, so you've got to be somewhat careful with them. So some governators that you can employ basically that you could use for battle and that you kind of get to make some choices with as you go. Not your typical lord, but something of that kin. And then we have the Ice Court, which is basically a training center for icy witch ladies. You can choose whether to train an Ice Witch, which is the lord, or the Frost Maiden, which is the hero. And throughout their training, you'll be given choices, and depending on which one you choose, that'll build the character to how you want them to be. So it's basically Build-A-Bear, but with ice witches. Although if you could build a bear, that would also be very cool. Because, you know, Kislev, bears, it's their thing. This is another nice mechanic. It allows you to tailor your lord or hero to have the traits that you want them to have, rather than you just having to pick from a pool of randomly assigned trait heroes. It's a nice feature, but I'm not sure it's one we're really going to use loads, because how many Ice Witch Lords do you need? You're probably not going to have more than 2 or 3 armies for most of the campaign until you get to late game and you can start spamming them. So you might make 1 Ice Witch and a couple of Frost Maidens and then probably not really need any more. But hey ho, we shall see. On to the tech tree, which is a tech tree. It's a little bit different in the sense that it's set up by the nations of Kislev, some representing the individual cities, some the different aspects of the Kislev nation, the motherland, etc. Usual kind of tech tree setup. Some things are kind of locked away and you have to research the previous ones before you can unlock the new area. Tech trees always feel kind of the same thing to me, they're just presented in a different way. Some can be really quite different, but nothing too crazy here. Kislev, typical tech tree. So that is Kislev's Campaign Mechanics. What do you reckon? I think it sounds pretty cool. I like the idea of devotion and the people believing in their leaders and their devotion to the cause of holding back the chaos with the help of their gods, and the political struggle between the nation itself, between Tzarina and Kostaltyn. That sounds pretty fun to manage, not to mention the constant chaos that you're going to have to be fighting off. Like I say, Kislev is the faction I'm most looking forward to. I think I'm going to do a Kostaltyn campaign first. That boy looks like my dude. I like the whole psycho-religious zealot unkillable thing. It's always a pretty cool angle. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. See you in the future.